Despite the doubts that had been cast upon it before its release, Kingdom Hearts would be a rousing success for Square. Those who were undeterred by the Disney characters and worlds would be met with a combat system which was a bit more complex than it initially appeared, stellar presentation, and a charming story about the ties that bind us. That no matter the distance between you and those you care about, you're never truly alone. You will always find your way back to each other. The ending may have been bittersweet, but this earnest assurance and commitment to its base themes made it that much easier to swallow. It would also leave the door open for the story to continue, and the game's strong acclaim and sales quickly earned it the green light for a sequel. But would the novelty wear off before it came together? Or could the team build upon the original premise to make Kingdom Hearts stand firm on its own 2 feet? While Kingdom Hearts' ending wasn't fully conclusive, there initially weren't any concrete plans for a sequel. But Tetsuya Nomura did have ideas in mind for a follow-up should the opportunity arise, and left some minor, inconsequential loose ends that could be tied up later. The mysterious robed figure in the secret place and Ansem's appearance when he possessed Riku were 2 such points that were conceived of with room to potentially expand upon. But the biggest and most obvious hook was the game's secret ending, Another Side, Another Story, which saw characters resembling Sora and Riku in a dark city and a young woman waiting on a beach. Nomura was reluctant to give many details, but would let it slip that it would, in some way, be elaborated in a follow-up.
Well, since everybody is having fun guessing who they are, I worry about revealing information. Well, Riku is one of them. I want to stop revealing if the other 2 are really Kairi or Sora. If there really is going to be a continuation, then I would like not to reveal any more about the clip, since it will actually have to do with the sequel. Tetsuya Nomura.
Square's modest expectations of 500,000 sales in Japan would be met within its first 10 days on store shelves, and Kingdom Hearts would be the 3rd best-selling game in the country for the first half of 2002, with over 787,000 copies sold. Before the game had even reached international markets, a sequel already seemed inevitable, and by the time the game's final mix version was released exclusively in Japan that December, Nomura had already begun planning the follow-up in earnest. Final Mix would even include 2 new major teases for what was to come: an enigmatic new secret boss wearing the same black coat as the Keyblade-wielding young man from Another Side, Another Story, and a new secret ending, Deep Dive, which followed up on what was depicted in its predecessor. Nomura seemed to have big plans for Kingdom Hearts 2. At the very least, he knew that he wanted the game's beginning to be as intriguing as possible, taking place a whole year after the first game, and with a different atmosphere. This temporal gap in the story wasn't a concern at first, but when he started hearing about how much children wanted to play Kingdom Hearts on the Game Boy Advance, he saw an opportunity to fill in these blanks with a bridge title, Chain of Memories, which would also provide a convenient narrative explanation for why Sora wouldn't have any of his abilities from the original at the start of the sequel. As if it wasn't enough that Nomura would be directing both Chain of Memories and Kingdom Hearts 2 simultaneously, he would also be heavily involved in multiple projects for the burgeoning compilation of Final Fantasy VII meta-series, most significantly, co-directing the theatrical sequel film, Advent Children, alongside Kingdom Hearts movie director Takeshi Nozue, who would return to do the same for Kingdom Hearts 2. In fact, most of the KH1 team would return for the sequel, with some of them, like art director Tomohiro Hasegawa, animation director Tatsuya Kondo, and planning director Yuichi Kanemori, pulling double duty, working on both COM and KH2. It wasn't quite the same case on the story side, however. While Nomura would quickly bring back Kazushige Nojima, who had written the first game scenario from Hollow Bastion through to the end, Jun Akiyama would be working as the event director for Final Fantasy XII. Daisuke Watanabe would return, but only as a text editor, possibly as a result of him writing the scenario for Chain of Memories, for which Nomura and Nojima would be credited as supervisors, likely to maintain consistency with KH2's scenario as it was being developed. Nomura trusted Nojima, and it's understandable why. They had worked together on the stories for Final Fantasy VII and VIII, as well as KH1, all massively successful titles. But before Kingdom Hearts, Nojima was typically the one leading the charge on the scenario, whereas for KH1 he was brought in later to bring it over the finish line. But he didn't intentionally leave any hints toward future stories. He didn't even know anything about what was being seeded in those secret endings. It wasn't until Nomura gave Nojima an outline that he and the cutscene team had written that Nojima was even able to begin figuring things out.
Tetsu always has a clear idea of what he wants to do. He relayed his thoughts to me, and then I was free to do the rest. He told me he wanted to resolve the mysteries left over from the previous game. Early on, he gave me a mystery list consisting of such conundrums. When I asked him, "So am I supposed to come up with all the answers?" he replied, "It's okay, I've already taken care of a few of them." I thought, just a few? You don't even have answers for everything yet. Kazushige Nojima.
After several months of planning and deliberation, the particulars of the Kingdom Hearts 2 project would finally begin to crystallize between July and August of 2003, just in time for it and Chain of Memories to be officially announced. On Friday, September 26th, 2003, Square Enix held a press conference at the Tokyo Game Show to reveal a handful of new, upcoming projects. On either side of the stage stood two life-size statues of Sora. To the left, he appeared as he did in the original Kingdom Hearts, but the one on the right was a bit taller, with slightly lighter hair and a new, black outfit. While rumors had been flying around the internet since spring, before Square and Enix had even officially begun operating as a single entity, it wouldn't be until today that Kingdom Hearts 2 was officially confirmed to be in development, alongside Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. Tetsuya Nomura and Buena Vista Interactive General Manager Graham Hopper would share some promotional art for both games, as well as a teaser trailer for KH2 that would pique the interest of anyone who had played and loved the original. While the teaser wouldn't give a release date, saying it was a work in progress, outlets both in Japan and abroad would publish their coverage of the reveal with a 2004 release window. Such a time frame, however, would prove to be a bit overly optimistic. By the end of summer 2004, the release date would be pushed back to 2005, with Tetsuya Nomura remaining tight-lipped about the game all the while, but Nomura's confidence wouldn't be misplaced, as excitement from the game's press continued to build with every drop of info that trickled out. This anticipation, however, was also tinged with a certain frustration at the long wait. It would be a little over 2 years between the game's initial announcement in September 2003 and it finally being released in Japan in December 2005. It was a wide gap, which Nomura would attribute to the game being announced too early. Rather than build off of the technical foundations of the first game, Kingdom Hearts 2 had been built from the ground up, with even returning worlds and areas being totally reinvented for the sequel. But whether it was this ambitious drive, Nomura's simultaneous work on Advent Children, which itself had also been pushed back from 2004 to September 2005, or perhaps both, is up for debate. Both were massive projects of great importance to Square Enix, so much so that Nomura had to approve the final build for Chain of Memories retroactively because he had to attend Advent Children's premiere at the Venice Film Festival, which overlapped with the final submission date for the game's ROM. Nomura may have been as powerful as he was quiet, but even he couldn't be in more than one place at a time. Fans would spend the whole of 2005 speculating about Kingdom Hearts 2 on internet forums. What new and returning Disney worlds would appear was of course an evergreen topic, but now that they had crossed the bridge that was Chain of Memories, rumors and discussion had begun to center more fervently on the KH original aspects, which Com had not only placed more front and center, but deliberately left many questions regarding them unanswered to generate excitement. Who are the organization? Who is Diz? What's the deal with Twilight Town and this other side of Sora's heart? But there was one question in particular that persisted for the remainder of Kingdom Hearts 2's pre-release period. Spurred by the secret endings of the first game, the final tease at the end of Chain of Memories, and the ever-growing number of trailers.
BHK?
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 BHK? BHK?
BHK?
BHK?
What if BHK is his other side of his heart?
BHK isn't another side of Sora's heart. He is like the mere shell. Remember at Hollow Bastion where Sora lost his old shell? Maybe his old one developed into another body as well.
I don't think that BHK is just a shell, because in the trailers, you can see him showing expressions and having friends. Something I don't think someone without a heart could do.
If BHK and Naminé are products of people losing their hearts, what about the other princesses of heart?
I think BHK is related to Naminé, like maybe brother, sister? I don't know, they both have blonde hair.
I personally think that it's Kairi's heart that's trying to protect Sora.
Could they be brought back together? Or in other words, fused?
I think the blonde-haired kid could be Titus. It makes sense, Sora knows Titus.
What if the BHK is the one who wants to harm Sora, and Axel is only trying to defend him in his own sick way?
Damn people, there are already like 100 other topics like this, so you noobs should stop making them and read the other ones first.
Countless threads would spring up almost daily, pontificating on any and all aspects of the character, with subsequent trailers and magazine scans further fueling the flames. The 2005 Tokyo Game Show trailer revealing him to be a playable character proved to be especially fertile ground, particularly for those who hadn't played Chain of Memories and were thus in the dark on why Sora appeared to be sleeping. Many were eager to continue with the speculation. Others had begun to grow impatient with the unending torrent of half-baked theories, instead adopting a stance of, just wait for the game and all will be revealed. This was easier said than done for some, but what made it harder for others was the lack of any concrete international release dates. The Japanese release date of December 22nd, 2005 was well known, but it wouldn't be until early February that Square Enix and Disney would announce that Kingdom Hearts 2 would hit shelves in North America toward the end of March, while European fans wouldn't know when they would get the game until much later that year. Until international fans could get their hands on localized versions of the game, they would either have to avoid spoilers or indulge in whatever out-of-context snippets they could scavenge from those who had acquired the Japanese version. Regardless of which path they took, their patience would be rewarded, as Kingdom Hearts 2 would finally be released in North America on March 28th, 2006. Some, however, didn't expect the game to be front-loaded with answers, or for some of those answers to beget further questions. Kingdom Hearts 2 begins not with Sora, but with the enigmatic boy who had so thoroughly captured fans' attention in the lead-up to release, Roxas. While his name was a closely guarded secret leading up to the game's Japanese release, it did end up leaking in early December, with confirmation of these leaks seeming to come when the track list for the game's soundtrack was shown on an online store listing, which was quickly removed from the product description. As for why his name was being kept under wraps, well, if it isn't obvious already, we'll come back to it soon. In any case, Roxas is a fairly normal kid from Twilight Town. It's the last week of his summer vacation, and he and his friends, Hayner, Pence, and Olette, are trying to fill these final days with as much fun as they can before having to finish their summer assignment and go back to school. But as the days go by, strange things keep getting in the way of their plans. Photos of Roxas, as well as the word photo itself, are stolen by mysterious white creatures that keep appearing all over town. When Roxas first confronts one of these monsters, he finds that he's able to wield the Keyblade. A strange girl named Namine asks him if he remembers his true name. A man in a black coat named Axel is trying to steal him away for cryptic reasons. And every night, Roxas dreams of Sora, a boy he doesn't know and has never met, experiencing the events of the first game piecemeal through these dreams. You spend the first few hours of the game with Roxas in a series of daily episodes that see his world slowly unravel around him, all while he's monitored by the mysterious Diz and his accomplice, who wears the same coat as Axel. This whole prologue section is paced and structured like a slow-burn thriller, playing on the expectations and preconceptions of the two basic categories of players, those who played both KH1 and Chain of Memories, and those who played the former but skipped the latter. The overriding tone is one of quiet unease and confusion, which is accentuated in different ways for each group of players. Those who skipped Calm will be taken aback that they aren't playing as Sora, and will be unfamiliar with Twilight Town, Diz, Namine, and Axel, while those who did play it will expect to learn more about this new character and the town, but still be shocked to see that Diz's accomplice is Ansem, the first game's villain. Didn't Sora defeat him? What's he doing here? Why is Diz working with him? Didn't Riku and Mickey go with Diz at the end of Chain of Memories? What happened to them? And of course, both groups would be set up to wonder how Roxas is able to use the Keyblade. It's something Roxas isn't quite sure of himself. Before, all he really had to worry about was hanging out with his friends and staying out of the way of the local bullies, Cypher, Fujin, and Raijin from Final Fantasy VIII, whose group is rounded out by Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. But the more Roxas tries to understand what's going on, the more his whole world starts to come apart at the seams. He's thrust into the dive to the heart like Sora was at the start of the first game. Axel tries telling him that he's the 13th member of a covert organization, and that the town he's living in isn't even real. He somehow makes brief telepathic contact with Kairi, who's struggling to remember Sora, and every time it seems like things are going Roxas's way, it somehow gets completely turned on its head. He even falls off the clock tower at the end of the 4th day, but he wakes up perfectly fine in his bed the next morning, with none of his friends remembering what should have been a fatal slip.
I'm dreaming. But which parts were the dream?
This all comes to a head starting at the end of day 5, when Roxas meets Namine again at the old mansion in the woods at the edge of town. She tells him that, a year ago, she was forced to meddle with Sora's memories and has been working to put him back together again ever since, as shown in Chain of Memories. As for what that has to do with Roxas, well...
In order for Sora to become completely whole again, he needs you.
Me? What for?
You hold half of what he is. He needs you, Roxas. You were never supposed to exist.
Even before getting into the world-shattering 6th day, this scene cuts right to the existential ennui that has engulfed Roxas. his world has steadily begun to make less and less sense, unraveling over the course of only a few days, and this has revolved specifically around him. All he wants to do is make memories with his friends, knowing that they'll probably drift or be pulled apart over time as they get older, and they want to enjoy what time they have now.
Do you guys think we'll always be together like this?
I sure hope so.
Well, I doubt we could be together forever. But isn't that what growing up's all about? What's important isn't how often we see each other, but how often we think about each other.
Yet he keeps getting pulled away by things they can't see and he can't even begin to explain to them. By Naminé, by Axel, and of course, by Diz. Is it really too much to ask to just let this kid enjoy the rest of his summer vacation with his friends, eat sea salt ice cream, go to the beach, and smack each other with foam bats for fun? It's something that anyone can relate to. We've all been teenagers. We've all wanted to roam free and just pow around with our friends without a care in the world. And for a lot of us, we were able to do just that during the summer. Most of us probably didn't think too hard about the future. And if we did, we envisioned still hanging out with our pals well into adulthood. But life has a way of pulling us away from our found families simply through circumstance. You don't spend a lot of time with Roxas and his friends, but you quickly understand just how important they are to him, and how much it hurts that there's this growing disconnect between them that not only is he the only one aware of, but that he's utterly powerless to stop. Looking back on this prologue as an adult, it's hard not to see even more of myself in Roxas now than I did when I was a teenager. Back then, I was full of angst and questioned life and existence in a way that was basically just moping about things which really didn't matter. They seemed so important because my world was so small, and while the most basic idea of non-existence, not knowing what would happen to my own consciousness after death, started to creep its way into my adolescent mind and petrify me, I was never confronted with the sort of existential crisis that Roxas is faced with. His existence, as it's described here, is not as his own person, despite having his own identity, free will, and sense of self, but as an aspect of someone else. His autonomy, his individuality, his personhood are all challenged in a way that he isn't equipped to contest. All of this is amplified on the 6th and final day of the prologue, where his connection with his friends is forcibly severed, the world around him freezes in place, and Diz orders him to return to the mansion in order to merge with Sora to reawaken the prodigal son, the hero that most everyone playing this game has been waiting to see return. To return everything Roxas is to a boy he never met, for reasons he and the player barely understand. Even before Naminé tells him about his connection to Sora, there are hints laid out for the player to pick up on. Roxas may have blonde hair that's styled differently, but his face and bangs are identical to Sora's. Even the way he holds and swings the Keyblade at the start of his combo are remarkably similar to how Sora used it in the first game. They're subtle tells, but they are there. It's at the old mansion where Roxas's memories really start flooding back. He did know Axel at one time. They used to be best friends, back when Roxas was also a member of the organization. But in his search for answers, to understand who he is and why he can use the Keyblade, Roxas defected to Axel's lament.
You get on their bad side and they'll destroy you!
No one would miss me.
That's not true. I would.
It wasn't long after this that Roxas clashed with Riku, as originally shown in the first game's secret endings, and ultimately ended up in the hands of Diz, who uploaded Roxas into a digital recreation of Twilight Town to keep him hidden from his former employers until it was time for him to return to Sora. Roxas's story is a somber one, probably the most downbeat vignette of the series so far, and at the time, it was one of the most controversial parts of Kingdom Hearts 2. For those fans who skipped Chain of Memories, it was a confusing and unwanted barrier between them and the protagonist they actually knew and wanted to see again. They didn't want to spend 3 or 4 hours with him, and after the title card, they were immediately left to wonder what the point of having such a long prologue even was. Those who did play COM were far more forgiving, but such fans were sadly in the minority, if that game's sales and reputation are anything to go by. KH2's prologue would quickly become infamous for its length and seeming detachment from what would come after it. But even in a vacuum, it's an emotionally compelling bit of storytelling. I liked Roxas. It's easy to project oneself and their friends onto him and his simply by virtue of them being bored teenagers in the summer. Twilight Town, now that it's more than just an aesthetic applied to small rooms, is a cozy and idyllic little hamlet that feels like it's big enough for there to always be something to do, but not so big as to be overwhelmingly busy. Diz is an intriguing villain here, dehumanizing Roxas and robbing him of the choice to go on existing for what he sees as the greater good. And knowing that Roxas was apparently fighting for the bad guys before we took control of him, that he was best friends with the only member of the organization that survived Chain of Memories, that he not only fought Riku, but that it seems like it was a close fight. These little nuggets of backstory are tantalizing in their own way, illustrating that Roxas really was his own person with his own life. By discounting all of that simply because he isn't who one may have been expecting to play as in these early hours, Roxas's independence and right to exist are further infringed upon, philosophically speaking. Players who wanted him out of the way so that they could reunite with Sora, the hero they actually wanted to see, are no better than Diz in that sense. They become complicit, accomplices you could even say. And what's interesting is that the player is never judged if they do feel that way. They just have to carry that weight with them, just as Sora now has Roxas stirring somewhere deep within him. People were critical of this part of the game because it threw a bunch of new stuff at them without much context. And regardless of whether you played Chain of Memories, this isn't really an issue. Kingdom Hearts 2, both within this prologue and later on in the story, does a good enough job of recapping what happened in COM for those who skipped it to understand 2's story without getting bogged down in details that aren't of immediate importance here. Playing it would better prepare you for this prologue, because you would be more primed to pick up what the game is putting down here, but that overriding sense of confusion that pervades these opening hours is very much intentional no matter what. Regardless of how one feels about the prologue, however, it does raise a few key questions which guide the rest of the story now that Sora's back in action. What is Diz's endgame? Why is Ansem still around and working with him? What happened to Riku after his fight with Roxas? And what are these capital N nobodies that everyone keeps talking about? From Sora's perspective, Kingdom Hearts 2 picks up more or less where the first game left off, when he, Donald, and Goofy emerge from their slumber. The only clue that something else happened is that Jiminy's journal only has "Thank Naminé" written in it. But they're not all too concerned about it, surprisingly. They're more focused on continuing their journey to find Riku and the king. They find themselves in Twilight Town, where they're quickly attacked by the same white creatures that Roxas fought, before the king himself directs them to leave town by train. The train brings them to the tower of Master Yen Sid, who, like in the Sorcerer's Apprentice segment of Fantasia, was once Mickey's mentor. He explains that, while Sora was successful in stopping the Heartless last time, not only do they still linger, but another faction, the Nobodies, the shell left behind when someone with a strong will becomes a Heartless, have started to appear and wreak havoc among the worlds. And just as the Heartless were being controlled by Maleficent and Ansem, the Nobodies are being directed by the mysterious Organization 13, a group of higher nobodies in black coats who not only retained their memories of when they still had hearts, but have retained human form as well. Yensid entrusts the trio to get to the bottom of the organization's plan, while a reborn Maleficent and her number one henchman, Pete, attempt to shore up their heartless hordes to cast the world in darkness once again. Thus begins the main plot of Kingdom Hearts 2. And it's a simple plot at its core, not all that dissimilar to that of the first game, really. Sora, Donald, and Goofy are still gallivanting around various Disney worlds, fighting the Heartless along the way, but not only do they have to contend with the bumbling Pete, but we also have a new enemy type thrown into the mix to add a bit more complexity than before. You don't fight nobodies very often, but their aesthetic and movements still leave a strong impression. Not only are they white and silver to contrast against the typically darker colors of the Heartless, their overall physiology and physicality are unnerving. Many of them look like they're zipped up in skin-tight bodysuits with movements ranging from twitchy to graceful, but most of the time they move erratically. Combine this with many of them having the loosest suggestion of a human face, with only small details reflecting the absence of eyes, noses, and mouths, and you have a host of monsters that mostly do a commendable job of getting across the most basic concept of them being empty husks. Because they're the leftover bodies of people who lost their hearts to darkness, nobodies, obviously, lack hearts. They can't feel emotion, nor are they able to form any sort of human connection. They're not like the Heartless, which impulsively try to expand their own ranks by claiming hearts to convert into more Heartless. Nobodies are more intelligent and organized. They act with purpose, if not consciousness. Their lack of hearts and the impossibility of their own existence, standing in the twilight between light and darkness, means they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Thus, they are arguably far more dangerous, according to Yensid. So let's pull off that band-aid right now, since all the information is in place by the time you leave Yensid's tower. Roxas is Sora's nobody. He was born when Sora used the Keyblade of People's Hearts to release Kairi's heart in the first game. KH2 hardly tries to hide this, even Roxas's name is a dead giveaway. It's an anagram of Sora, but with an X thrown into the mix. There was even going to be a scene somewhere in the game where Roxas would be shown Sora's name, the letters would be jumbled up, and an X would be added to them, thus giving him his name. But Nomura felt that the way he wanted this to be shown was too difficult to pull off with the time they had, and so it was cut. In fact, Nomura had conceptualized Roxas for Kingdom Hearts 2 before considering a new appearance for Sora, and had even sketched an early version of him who looked much closer to Sora in the very first design document. The slightly lighter tone of brown for Sora's hair in this game is even meant to be a reflection of Roxas. Sora, however, is kept in the dark about all of this until basically the very end, leaving him to wonder who Roxas is, why the organization keep calling him that, and how he recognizes a photo of him despite having never met the kid before. Not that this is a flaw, mind you. Dramatic irony is merely a tool, one of several which are used to tell a more layered and complex story than the first game. But we'll touch more on all that as we go. As carefully considered as the first game's combat was, not all players were totally appreciative of it. Some felt the overall gameplay was a bit stiff and awkward, especially the platforming, and that combat often felt a bit slow or too much like a button masher. I personally disagree, but the battle team, led once again by Yuichi Kanemori, took these criticisms to heart for the sequel, completely revamping movement, combat, and level design to be more approachable to the average player. Fights are faster, flashier, and more kinetic than they were in the first game. Sora may be taller now, but the camera was dramatically pulled back and remapped to the right analog stick for the sake of visibility. The triangle button has been reworked to activate context-sensitive reaction commands. Abilities can now be instantly equipped rather than shuffling back and forth between confirmation menus. Party members can now be swapped out in the field via the expanded command menu, and they each have their own limit breaks that can be unleashed as long as you both have MP. And Keyblades now have abilities tied to them, adding an extra layer of decision-making when choosing your equipment. As much as I admire KH1's gameplay, I can't ignore how much more elegant KH2 feels. Everything feels much smoother and better integrated with each other than in KH1. Level design is more streamlined, so getting lost or turned around is now a complete non-issue. You can even still control the command menu with the right analog stick if you want, either by holding L2 at the same time or by swapping the L2 control in the menu. Wait, didn't L2 switch lock-on targets in the first game? Did KH2 get rid of that? And the levels, they all feel kind of flat, and parts of them are arbitrarily blocked off until you hit a certain point in the story. So I can't explore? And the level design doesn't encourage unlocking the growth abilities? So why are they here if the worlds are designed to be totally traversable without them? Why are there no secrets like in KH1? Oh no. The reason for this shift in design philosophy was explained by planning director Yuichi Kanemori in an interview in the game's Ultimania, and it's basically what you'd expect. While people who liked platformers and other games which encouraged exploration and discovery were generally on board with KH1's design, there were plenty of people who gave up on that first game because they weren't great at platforming. Kingdom Hearts 2 was designed to appeal to both crowds. But while it generally feels good to play, this streamlining leads to there being significantly less friction and fewer choices. For those who struggled with the first game, this is probably a good thing, as it means there's not only less of a learning curve, but also fewer impediments to engaging with the game and its story. But combine these with there being less variety outside the main story, and you've got a game that feels watered down compared to the original. Combat is smooth and elegant, yes, but it doesn't feel as interesting anymore. I played on Proud Mode, as I am wont to do, and not only did I rarely feel like I was being challenged, but that I didn't have to press anything other than attack and the occasional spell or reaction command, which, again, add to the flashiness of combat, but their implementation varies from enemy to enemy. Some you can trigger easily by landing a finisher, others are dependent on their attack pattern, and others still are just part of the motions of a given boss fight. Your mileage may vary on whether they're cool and dynamic or annoying and overabundant, but they are an integral part of the game. I know I'm being harsh. I know it sounds like I despise Kingdom Hearts 2's gameplay, but I don't. I really don't. I can see cool and interesting things here. Abilities like Combo Boost can stack damage in interesting ways the longer you keep your combo going. Negative Combo can let you dish out only finishing moves, which may sound strange, but what if there was a more practical application for this? Abilities on Keyblades is such a great idea too, but the best strategy is still usually to use whichever one has the highest stats. Not always, of course. Decisive Pumpkin is really good just because it has Combo Boost on it, but usually. There are little things sprinkled throughout that make me want to like Kingdom Hearts 2's gameplay more than I do, but there's just nothing here to really take advantage of this effervescent brilliance. Even on Proud Mode, it feels like a button masher with the occasional press of the triangle button to lock in a win. So no, I don't hate it, but I am a little disappointed. However, while the gameplay may be a bit weak in spots, this doesn't extend to every aspect of Kingdom Hearts 2. Not only is the story engaging enough to push through, but the villains at the center of it are the most enticing in the series so far.
A nobody doesn't have a right to be. Nobodies may seem to have feelings, but this is a ruse. They only pretend to have hearts.
Oh, we do too have hearts. Don't be mad.
True, we don't have hearts, but we remember what it was like. That's what makes us special.
When Kingdom Hearts is ours, we can exist fully and completely.
Since the Heartless were the big bads of the first game, it would be good practice to shift the role of antagonists to another force. one which may have ties to or somehow reflect some aspect of the heartless or the darkness-light dichotomy already established, but in a way that expands upon them. Enter the Nobodies, whom we've already discussed, and their overlords, Organization 13. They're all nobodies, they all lack hearts, and they're trying to gather as many hearts as they can to form Kingdom Hearts, similar to Ansem in the first game. But whereas Ansem sought power in doing so, the organization want to be whole again. They believe that summoning Kingdom Hearts will grant them the power to restore the hearts they've lost. There's a tragic quality to this, which is amplified further based on how you read each of the individual members. They're not all stoic, emotionless husks like you would expect beings without hearts or emotions to be, but the personalities they exhibit are stated to be a front, an echo of the people they used to be, something they cling to in an attempt to try and feel whole again. But the vibrancy of personality varies significantly between each individual member, and while they each have some trait that sets them apart from most of the others, there's still plenty of negative space for the player to speculate about how or why any given member lost or perhaps even willingly gave up part of themselves to become creatures of nothingness. Of course, this is all conjecture based on the simple but distinct personalities presented, which can be seen as either the organization's greatest strength or their collective Achilles heel. Are they cool and interesting because of the aesthetic and concept? Or dull and gimmicky because of how shallow and one-note most of them are? I think the big deciding factors are how old you were when you played KH2, and or the emotional state you're in at the time you're playing. The first game was targeted towards kids and tweens first and foremost, but it had been 3 to 4 years since then. They were growing up. Now that initial fanbase was skewing slightly older, there are more teenagers in the mix. And the most universal aspect of adolescence is learning to come to grips with the wider spectrum of emotions that you experience at that age. Anxiety, rejection, infatuation, low self-esteem. Everything is amplified by virtue of them being new and unfamiliar, combined with a general lack of life experience. All the while, you start to figure out who you really are and try different things on the way to understanding yourself. And for many teens, I'd even hazard a guess and say most teens, every misstep has the potential to feel like the end of the world. I got into Kingdom Hearts when I was 12, going from the first game to Kingdom Hearts 2 in short order, with Chain of Memories not long after when I was 13. So I'm speaking from experience here. There were plenty of times throughout junior high and high school where I felt overwhelmed by emotions I wasn't fully equipped to process, when I felt like a misunderstood outcast with no one I thought I could open up to. I didn't know how to deal with any of it in a healthy way, and often wanted to just feel nothing at all. Even now, as an adult, there are times when I feel the weight of my job, scheduling videos and their respective production schedules months if not years in advance, while maintaining personal relationships and making sure I'm able to pay the rent. Not to get too personal here, but the past several months in particular have been especially difficult. I know that I will ultimately come out the other side okay, but there were times when working on this video that I just didn't want to do anything but lay on the couch and watch an entire season of Scrubs in a day, drink in hand. I was breaking down emotionally, and at times it was physically painful enough that I just didn't want to feel anything at all. It's fitting, I guess, that this all happened while working on this video in particular, as it reminded me of when I was a lonely, lovesick teenager who thought that Organization 13 and Nobodies in general were not just interesting on a conceptual level, but kind of appealing. I'm in a much better place now than I was then, obviously. I've got a strong support network and a better handle on myself than I did when I was in high school, but I'm not immune to the feeling of wanting to eschew my emotions when I get overwhelmed or when things feel like they're crumbling. I'm only human, and at one point, so were the organization. Of course, their days of villainy were facilitated by the organization's superior. Vexen basically spelled it out to Riku in Chain of Memories, but it isn't until the midpoint of KH2 that it's formally revealed that the leader of Organization 13 is none other than Ansem's nobody, Xemnas. Except, not exactly. Because Kingdom Hearts 2 throws a massive curveball at the player, which completely upends their understanding of who Ansem even is. Within Hollow Bastion's computer, Tron says that his user is Ansem, or Ansem the Wise as he calls him. After fiddling with the computer, the gang turn up a photo of an older gentleman who Mickey says is Ansem, much to Sora's confusion. Sora refers to the portrait hanging behind Ansem's desk, which closely resembles the man he defeated at the end of the first game, only for Mickey to pull the rug out from under him and the player.
Well, the man in the picture is definitely the one who tried to take over Kingdom Hearts, but what you actually fought was his Heartless. You see, he wasn't really Ansem, he just went around telling everybody that he was.
Let's not bury the lead here. This is a retcon. Nothing in the first game suggested that the Ansem we fought was anybody but, well, Ansem. However, this is not to say that this is necessarily a bad thing. Retcons, literally retroactive continuity, tend to get a bad rap in this day and age, often being seen as symptomatic of poor planning or foresight when crafting a story, an amateur attempt to wring out more plot and conflict to keep things going when a writer has written themselves into a corner. While there are plenty of examples you could make of ongoing serialized stories doing exactly that, this doesn't mean that retcons are inherently bad. Like dramatic irony, the retcon is a tool, one which can be used to a story's benefit or its detriment. A famous example of a retcon which doesn't receive all that much scrutiny is Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father. The revelation contradicts everything we knew about Luke's parentage from the original Star Wars, and these cracks needed to be smoothed over with some philosophical hand-waving from Obi-Wan at the start of Return of the Jedi for it all to gel.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
The Ansem/Xehanort retcon in Kingdom Hearts 2, however, had a lot more wiggle room within what was already established. The reveal comes when Mickey sees the picture of Ansem the Wise and identifies the portrait of Xehanort as one of Ansem's apprentices. It should be around here when the player realizes just how few people actually saw Ansem in the flesh during KH1. That alone leaves the door wide open to something like this, and if the story being told is going to deal with these other beings that are created when someone becomes a Heartless, well, naturally it would make sense to make the villain fall in line with that. But this retcon does more than just give more gas to an ongoing story. It also helps to prop up Kingdom Hearts 2's most major themes: identity and duality. There's a common criticism that's levied against Kingdom Hearts 2 regarding its use of Disney worlds and characters, that unlike KH1, they don't really tie into the wider scope of the story. In terms of plot, there's some merit to this critique, but there are recurring threads regarding characters feeling caught between two worlds or their purpose or sense of self being called into question throughout practically every single one of them. This is all in service to how these themes are reflected in the KH original cast. The major players are all either caught up in some sort of identity crisis, have their existence split across more than one entity, or question what it is they're supposed to do when it seems like every choice they make has awful ramifications. This is what ultimately makes the prologue with Roxas so meaningful. Yes, he does deserve to exist as his own person, even if he is an extension of Sora, because that doesn't define him. Ansem the Wise continues to carry the torches of these themes. His identity was stolen and dragged through the mud, forcing him to adopt a new one. But this new identity is not just constructed for convenience, but born from the betrayal and pain he's harbored for years. But Ansem the Wise isn't the only person here trying to make up for past mistakes. Riku has been working right beside him the whole time, as one would expect based on the end of Chain of Memories. He's just fully given in to the darkness festering within him, resulting in him taking the form of Xehanort's Heartless. It's still Riku though, he's fully in control, it's just his appearance that's changed. He still feels guilty for betraying Sora and letting himself be taken advantage of in KH1, and is trying to make up for his past sins by helping his friends out from the shadows. His transformation is yada yada as him needing to ensure that he could defeat Roxas after losing to him once, that he thought capturing Roxas would help wake up Sora from his year-long sleep. But this is the mechanical, textual explanation. While he may have accepted that his past sins don't define him, it was literally his entire arc in Chain of Memories, the weight of those sins doesn't just magically disappear once you start to forgive yourself. Accepting that you aren't beyond redemption isn't instantaneous. It's a process of healing, and that takes time. On some level, Riku still sees himself as a creature of darkness, marked by his sins, and that mark is the visage of the man who stole his body, the man who groomed him into becoming that creature. Right now, he thinks he needs that power to set things right, and is willing to give up part of himself to do it. But unlike Ansem the Wise, who gave himself to dark anger to fuel his desire to inflict retribution, and Xehanort, who split his being in twain in pursuit of power, Riku didn't lose himself in the process this time. This fracturing of his identity is just a mask he wears to protect those he cares about. He didn't think his friends would be able to see past his face or the actions it had taken. Once again, he underestimates the bond he shares with them.
Does that mean you can't change back?
This battle isn't over. And until it is, I still need the power of darkness.
Then, let's finish it. You're still Riku, no matter what.
Now that Sora and Riku have finally reunited, and with Organization 13 brought to its knees, all that's left is to deal with Xemnas. Before, Sora and Riku were on opposite sides of the door to darkness. Now they stand tall together, ready to put an end to the chaos that's torn their lives apart. Really, the focus of the ending, just like in KH1, is on Sora and Riku, with the former carrying the latter over his shoulder after a hard-fought battle. As they wander through the realm of nothingness and into the realm of darkness, they start to bare their souls to each other, opening up about their insecurities and being each other's emotional support after a lifetime of competition.
What I said back there, about thinking I was better at stuff than you, to tell you the truth, Sora, I was jealous of you.
What for?
I wished I could live life the way you do. Just following my heart.
Yeah, well, I've got my share of problems too.
Like what?
Like wanting to be like you.
Well, there is one advantage to being me. Something you can never imitate.
Really? What's that?
Having you for a friend.
Then I guess I'm okay the way I am. I've got something you could never imitate too.
I've seen this exchange get raked over the coals for being, of all things, the epitome of supposedly bad writing. But no, it's not. It may be sickening with how saccharine it is, but that's par for the course with Kingdom Hearts. At no point thus far has the series ever not been earnest with its emotions and characters. Everything is played completely straight. This moment between Sora and Riku is emblematic of that ethos. It's not bad writing, it's just unabashedly genuine. Kingdom Hearts has never tried to pretend it wasn't about the power of friendship. And really, what's so bad about that? It's what's driven Sora for 3 games now. It's what saved the day time and again. His commitment to his friends is what brought him back to them. And it's what ultimately brings him and Riku back home. Kairi wrote a message in a bottle at the start of the story, and sent it out to sea as she remembered Sora's name. Here on the Dark Shores, that message finally reaches him. Their connection to each other literally lights the way, where everyone is waiting. After a whole trilogy of games, Sora finally succeeded in bringing his friends home. Riku is able to relax and smile again, having defeated his demons. Roxas and Naminé can be together, as they look back at each other through Sora and Kairi's eyes. Everything is going to be okay. Thus concludes Kingdom Hearts 2, and God, I love this ending. The whole story built up to this moment, this reunion. The worlds are safe, Sora, Riku, and Kairi found their way back home, Roxas and Naminé retained their sense of self even as aspects of their original selves. All the loose ends have been tied up, and the story that started in Kingdom Hearts 1 has come to a natural and satisfying conclusion. It's such a simple ending, but words fail to describe how warm and cozy it makes me feel. Such is the experience, the oeuvre of Kingdom Hearts. Words can never truly do it justice. You have to experience it. You have to feel it. Kingdom Hearts 2 successfully built upon the foundations laid by the previous two games' stories, characters, and concepts, but it isn't without its shortcomings. The Nobodies in the organization are interesting in concept, but most of the actual members don't have much going for them. The gameplay is faster and smoother, but there's hardly anything here to really take advantage of it. The story is emotionally satisfying even if you didn't play Chain of Memories, but it can feel like it's spinning its wheels in the second half. Of course, a lot of you are probably thinking about all the things I didn't talk about, and to that I say, you must be new here. The 60-minute time slot for March Caprice felt much narrower than it did for KH1 and Calm, but, well, most of you should know the drill by now. This was only the abridged version of the video. Once this premiere is over, the full version will go live. It's over 3 times longer than the version you just watched, and features further discussion on the topics you're seeing scroll up the screen right now. There was a lot of ground to cover with Kingdom Hearts 2. A single hour was never going to suffice for me. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least talk about what this game really means to me, and in turn, what it probably means to a lot of you. While I may have preferred the first game in my teens, it was Kingdom Hearts 2 that arguably had the bigger impact on me. As cuckoo bananas as its story could feel at times, the earnestness with which it wears its proverbial heart on its sleeve, the themes of identity, duality, what it means to be human, the overriding theme of the bonds between people, and all the spiky-haired sad boys in stylish dark clothing meant that it became irresistible catnip for the emo subculture of the mid-2000s. The internet had become robust enough that music and video streaming through sites like YouTube was easier than ever. A new anime boom had begun to take hold, and forums allowed fans to congregate in dedicated spaces and marinate in their shared adoration for anything, really. Kingdom Hearts 2 was far from ground zero for the emo boom of the decade, but it was absolutely a flashpoint moment for the younger millennials and older Gen Z who felt lost in their adolescent years, and today, it's often inextricably tied to the subculture of the era. I not only saw it firsthand, but I was a part of it. I constantly rewatched all the KH2FM cutscenes and super bosses, hoping we'd get it localized someday. I yearned to have replica keyblades and an organization coat like the ones I'd see people wearing at the conventions I could never go to. That coat was, and still is, iconic, and my jaw practically dropped when I saw someone wearing it at my high school on Halloween one year. And of course, I made Kingdom Hearts AMVs and parodies in the vein of Crazy Files. Remember Crazy Files? And combining all this with my fascination with Halo Machinima sparked an interest in editing, filmmaking, and storytelling. If it wasn't for the 1-2 punch of Halo 2 and Kingdom Hearts 2, I wouldn't be where I am today. This channel probably would not exist. I wouldn't have sunk hundreds, if not thousands of hours into learning more about the art I so adore and sharing it with all of you. And I know I'm not the only one. March Caprice, the yearly event I make these Kingdom Hearts videos for, is a celebration of the series run by and for fans. There are countless illustrators, streamers, animators, editors, writers, cosplayers, any artistic discipline you can imagine, who come together every year to show their love for the series through their art. Each of them was inspired by this series in some way, touched by its characters, its themes, its stories, its raw, genuine emotionality, in an age where irony, poison, cynicism dominated the cultural landscape. In that sense, Kingdom Hearts is countercultural, cultivating its own communities who felt that they were left behind by whatever was left of a fading monoculture. The point where it all fully clicked varies from person to person, obviously, but for myself, and I'm sure plenty, if not most others, it was specifically Kingdom Hearts 2. Maybe not because it was the best, but because it hit us at just the right time. For me, that was in 7th grade. A classmate had a limited edition strategy guide with all of Sora's drive forms on the outside of it, piquing my interest. I got KH1 used at a GameStop in the mall in September 2007 and loved it. But after getting my new greatest hits copy of KH2 on December 31st, I was hooked for life. I was fully on board the train and have refused to get off it for over 18 years. No matter what life has thrown at me, through all the highs and lows, these games have always been a constant presence and, alongside Scrubs, have been a source of comfort through the hard times. And it's all thanks to Kingdom Hearts 2. It really was something special.